Good morning, Garland Nixon here, and I believe it or not, I took a few notes, and we're going to have a little bit of a talk about what I think that has been exposed by the Biden administration and his flock of morons. Let's talk. Let's start here because I've referred to Biden and his team as a flock of morons, and let me kind of define that really quick. I think, in fact, it's important to define that, define what I'm talking about right now. All right. When we talk about intellect, when we talk about somebody's an idiot, a genius, a fool, a moron, we use words like that. What are we referring to? There are a couple of things we could be referring to. We could be referring to actual processing power. How quick can they process things? There are people that you can say, hey, what's 156 times 157, and they can spurt it out, boom, immediately, right? Is that smart? Does that make them smart? You can look up the making of the movie The Rain Man. That was based on a guy by the name of Kim Peek. Kim Peek is known as this incredible savant, right? He could do incredible feats of, I'm not going to call them intellect, right? Either knowledge, rote memory, things of that nature. What he could do is, you could say to Kim Peek, like, 27 years from now, on January the 15th, what day of the week will it be? And he'd be like, Thursday. And he did it every time. He could do incredible things. He read books, like he would read a book. He read the right page with the right eye. He read the left page with the left eye at the same time. He read, I think, 12,000 books, and remembered everything in every detail, everything that he ever read, right? So this guy could do incredible feats of the brain. But did that mean that he was an intellectual? Kim Peek was when I was a child back then, they used the word mentally retarded. Now they use words such as mentally challenged. But the bottom line was, he was born with a dysfunction, a malfunction in his brain, where the two sides of your brain, the way they are connected, there's like a stem. He was born without that stem. So his brain had to rewire itself so that it would work properly. And bottom line was, he couldn't do the normal things that we think. His father had to take care of him. He was mentally challenged, per se. So he couldn't think things through. He didn't have the proper reasoning ability. And because of his brain malfunction, anytime he couldn't see his hands, he couldn't really control what they were doing. So he couldn't, like, brush his teeth or comb his hair, because if his hands weren't in his sight, he didn't have the proper control of them, right? So he could do all kinds of incredible things that would imply, based on how you judge intellect, that he was a genius. But he wasn't a genius because he couldn't even comb his hair, right? Why do I say that? When I talk about the Biden administration and I call them idiots and fools and morons and derogatory, pejorative terms like that, I don't mean their processing power. Jake Sullivan, Blinken, these guys are known to have been book smart, as the old folks would say. They were, book smart, right? I'll give you another example. A book called The American Axis, and it talked about some extremely anti-Semitic people, pro-Nazi people in the United States, such as Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh. But it talked about Charles Lindbergh prior to World War II. He visited Nazi Germany. He was a big supporter of Nazi Germany. And Lindbergh came back and he saw all of their great, engineering prowess, the things they were building, all these scientists and engineers. And he said it was incredible. It was amazing. And in fact, he kind of, let's just say, he might have even given them more credit than they deserved. But my point from a propaganda perspective, but here's the bottom line. One of the things that he said was he couldn't get over how stupid they were. Right now, think about it, about the contradiction again. What he's saying is, look, they can do incredible feats of engineering, incredible feats of brain power. But when he said how stupid they were, what was he talking about? I believe he was talking about the same thing I'm talking about in the Biden administration, right? The ability to utilize the data that you have in a manner that gives you a clear, unbiased picture of reality, right? It is to one of the things to me that I'm talking about is an absence of what's called motivated reasoning. See, I believe that when Lindbergh was talking about the Nazis, the Third Reich, he was talking about the same thing I'm talking about with the Biden administration and the U.S. empire, which is, in my opinion, the Fourth Reich, right? And so I think it makes sense that the same thing that Lindbergh would say about these clowns is the same thing that I would about those clowns, is the same thing I would say about the Biden administration. And I think at the heart of it is something called motivated reasoning, right? I want something to be true, so I just reason my way there. I want to date a supermodel, right? A guy sees one of these Instagram girls, right? And she's got all of the fake everythings, and she's, everything's fake. And on Instagram, she's got the filters, she's got everything. So she looks inhuman. She looks so beautiful. And this guy says, man, I'd like to date an Instagram model. And then he starts coming up a reason in his mind why she should date him, and she probably will, and blah, blah, blah. And he's messaging her, and she's messaging back saying, send money. And he can't figure it. He just knows. And he has convinced himself that this Instagram model is going to date him. And he's sending her money. Right? Why? Motivated reasoning. He wants to believe that. Now, if he looks at himself in the mirror, he's a schlump, disheveled, broke, living in his mom's basement. He's a hoarder. His computer doesn't work half of the time. His life's an absolute friggin' disaster. But he wants to date her, and he convinces himself that she will date him. A lot of people take advantage of that motivated reasoning. To me, when I see motivated reasoning, that's how I get from a person such as a Jake Sullivan, who's known to be, quote, book smart, to calling Jake Sullivan an idiot, because that book smart ain't going to get you where you need to be. You need to, as we would say in Zen, you need to unlearn, right? You need to be able to look objectively at things. And what do we know about the Biden administration? They can't look objectively at anything. We now have people in the Biden administration, as their constituents say, hey, we're feeling the pain of the economy. The Biden administration says, what's wrong with you? The economy's doing great. Why? Because if the economy were doing great, it would be excellent for Joe Biden's re-election prospects. So they just say it is. Why? Because it should be. It's got to be. They want it to be. So what do they do then? They go to their eggheads and they say, give me some data that says the economy's doing good. They don't say evaluate the economy. Give me some data. In fact, I got a perfect article here. Let me find my perfect article here. Here's one. Is it still here? No, this is not it. But I do have it. Okay. This is from the Rand Corporation, right? Let's look at this. So there's all this discussion now about how we're going to, how the Ukraine war is going to end, blah, blah, blah. And let's get a little better look at this. The eggheads now in Washington are now saying, okay, we got to come up with a plan, because they are not saying Russia's going to win, because it's obvious Russia's going to win. They're saying needs to be a stalemate. Perhaps Ukraine's not going to win. In other words, we can't face reality. So some schlumps who work for the Rand Corporation to say, hey, we're going to write a document, elements of an eventual Russia-Ukraine armistice. and the prospect for regional security. Now, as you already know, the way they come up with these things is they talk to their allies, they talk to their friends and people, and they say, what could we live with? And then they convince themselves that the Russians are incompetent, unable to fight, fighting with shovels and washing machines, and they're hungry to get out of this thing, right? But when you go down this thing, the elements, they want a cessation of hostilities agreement, right? The first stage of negotiation would be focused on reducing, if not ending, the violence. To be durable, it would include, they say, disengagement of forces and withdrawal of fires and missile systems from the line of contact, a contact group to monitor compliance, a third-party monitoring mission. Here's the thing about it. The obvious problem with that is the Russians are winning, and winning big. Why would they do that? Now, these people, because they're idiots, it's not that they can't figure that out. It's that it wouldn't work if it were true. Simple as that. It's not that they're not smart enough to figure it out. It's that if this were true, it wouldn't work for them. So they say, let's come up with a plan that works for us, right? So let's continue. So they go on about a monitoring mission, blah, 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 and then parallel agreements, right? And they talk about the Korean armistice, right? So they go on to say, they talk about how they're going to do it. And they say, NATO allies in Ukraine are pursuing both Kiev's integration, bringing in NATO, and eventual membership in the alliance on one hand, and bilateral security commitments that would provide significant military assistance over the long term on the other. This dual-pronged approach could lead to one outcome. So they go on to the various outcomes, right? A West German model, so they got all of these models, sounds good. And they go on to, here's one, the Israel model. Ukraine commits to explicit non-alignment, but receives security assistance commitments. This is effectively the Israel model. The U.S. has no formal treaty obligation to Israel, but does provide extensive military assistance, right? So they go on, and you just read on the final two options. So the bottom line is, if you read this piece of crap, it shows that they're idiots. Because you've got a grand corporation, people writing up a plan as to how this thing's going to end without taking into account one thing, that the Ukrainians are losing and there is no chance that they're going to win. Let me just look and make sure. Right? You don't take that in. They're not taking into account the facts on the ground. They're taking into account the facts on the Center for the Strategic whatever of the strategic review of taking money from the arms industries, right? These think tanks are all putting things together. They're putting these people together. Rand's putting things together, and they're saying, how do we want this to end? And so they write up, this is the way, here's some options, but they don't take into account that the Russians do not trust him because they've lied to him every time. And the Russians don't have to do anything but just tear Ukraine to shreds and carve it up as they see fit. So they're going to, at some point, approach the Russians, hey, let's talk. And the Russians are going to say, sure, sign this unconditional surrender or have a nice day. So what's going on here? What's happening here? The Biden administration, they're revealing and exposing the empire, the U.S. empire, for what it is right now. You can make arguments that it was something different in the past, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, but what is it right now? It's the equivalent. In some ways, you can make a lot of arguments that the U.S. is the equivalent of the Fourth Reich, that as did 1930s and 40s Germany. It's militarily powerful. It's militarily oriented. But when it comes to reasoning out its foreign policy, the leaders are extremely stupid. One of the things that, if you ever study psychology, right? One of the things that's discussed if a psychologist is starting off with a new patient, What is this person's inner voice? What is their inner conversation? How healthy is their inner conversation? And you know what I mean, the voice that you talk to yourself all the time. And some of us, like me, I talk to myself outwardly. I walk around and I'm having a conversation with myself, right? I should say this. I'm practicing saying things that I'm going to say at a time and all that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But the question is, how healthy is your inner conversation? You know, something happens. Are you saying to yourself, is your inner voice saying, I sure am stupid. Why'd I do that? I'm an idiot. I hate myself. Is your inner conversation saying, I'm the man. I'm the most powerful, smartest, coolest guy on earth. I am, you know, you're some kind of a narcissist who just like constantly builds yourself up. I am privileged. I should have privileges above everybody because I'm better than everybody, right? How healthy is that inner voice? And everybody here knows what I'm talking about. Most of our inner voices have some combination of health and, you know, and disorientation at times. We don't know what to think and what to say to ourselves, right? And if you look at the US empire, you ask yourself, how mentally healthy is it? What's the inner voice sound like, right? Another part of this is, as I talked about, the guy in the beginning who wants to date the Instagram model, right? How healthy is his inner voice? Is he realistically evaluating his chances? She's an Instagram model. She wants some billionaire or millionaire with a Maserati. I'm broke. I don't have a dime. If I put those two things together, I probably don't have much of a chance, right? The guy that does that is healthy. He sees the Instagram model. He recognizes that he'd like to date the Instagram model, but he reasons things out and says, nah, she's out for money and I ain't got it. So my odds ain't real good. I can hope and I can send her a picture and say, here's me. I'm a little overweight. Okay, maybe I'm 150 pounds overweight. Probably haven't had a haircut in 4 years, so I look a little rough around the edges. And I'm a hoarder, and I live in my mother's basement, and she's about to throw me out for being a hoarder. Did I mention my addictions? Right. So the guy does all of this, sends her the letter, and hopes, hey, maybe she'll say yes. But maybe he's at least reasonable enough to understand that the odds ain't good. He can reason himself into saying, I got nothing to lose. I'll give it a shot. But he can also reason himself into, but I ain't got much of a shot, right? His inner voice may be healthy, even though the rest of them ain't. So my point is this. What we're talking about when we look at this Rand Corporation thingy is the inner voice of the U.S. empire, right? And if you listen to the Biden administration, you look at the kind of things they're saying. Listen to Tony Blinken. You talk about an unhealthy inner voice. Everything can be going on in one direction. And Tony Blinken, right now, Blinken literally said recently, yes, the world is looking for our leadership on the Gaza issue, right? That's a real unhealthy inner voice. You can interpret that two ways. Number one, that Tony Blinken's really stupid as hell, and he doesn't know that the world is pissed at us. He can't, he's not noticing what's going on at the United Nations and the votes, and he hasn't noticed millions of people in the streets around the world saying, screw the United States, they're baby killers, right? That's one possibility, but I don't think it's valid. He's not deaf, dumb, and blind. He has access to information and details. The other part of it is this, motivated reasoning. And that is, Tony Blinken doesn't care if it's true or false. He doesn't say things because they're true or false. He just says things because if they were true, it would be great for the Biden administration. So that's what we look. That's one of the things that's exposed now. And that is that Blinken and his group, whether it's, hey, the economy's doing great, and people are like, yeah, but I can't afford chicken wings. I want to watch the game. I want to have my friends over, and we want to have chicken wings, but I can't afford chicken wings because they cost too much, right? We'll have some lettuce and one tomato to divide between 12 people, and we'll call that a salad. Can't really afford any dressing, so how about we go with some little bit of oil and vinegar. And then the interpretation of Blinken is the economy's doing great. What's wrong with you? Don't you know how great the economy's doing? Right? Oh, we're winning. Russia's doing terrible. They're losing. Everybody, the world wants to our leadership on Gaza. Why is that? Because Tony Blinken and the Biden administration have revealed something about empire, period. But in this particular case, the U.S. empire. The U.S. empire doesn't say things because they're true. They say things because if they were true, it would be great for their position. It would benefit them. It would make us look good. It would whatever we need. So the Biden administration, Blinken, don't get stressed out or angry at Joe Biden or these people because they say things and you shake your head like, what the hell planet are they living on? It's not that they're living on a different planet. It's not that they don't understand what's going on. They don't have the data or information. It is, always recall this. I've talked about this many times. When the Taliban was overrunning all of the positions of the Afghanistan army, Joe Biden called Ashraf Ghani, the puppet leader of Afghanistan, and said something that was very revealing. He said, I need you, even if it's not true, to basically, and I'm paraphrasing now, to project that everything's fine and we're doing good. So what did he say? I don't care if it's true or not. I need you to say this. It's an absolute lie. Who cares? That was and that's what Tony Blinken's doing. That's what they do. That's what Biden does. That's what they did before Biden was in. That's what the empire does after Biden's in it. Particularly a collapsing empire has to do it even more. A weakening empire has to do it even more because things are going bad. And you always have to pretend that things are going well. And in order to pretend that things are going well, you have to say that things are going well, even when they ain't. And that's where we are now. Now we're at a position moving forward. Don't listen to the Biden. Biden said recently that the problem with his polls is the media is not reporting the things that the wonderful things that they're doing, how good the economy is. His polls, it's not that his actual constituents, roughly 80% of the people in the Democratic Party want to end this Gaza massacre, right? I could go on and on about all of the things that are upside down as far as the polls for Biden within his own party. And no, that's not it. It's the media. Why? Because if that were true, it would be great for Biden. So they just say things. Their inner voice is, the inner voice of the U.S. empire is, everything's great, everything's wonderful. And if anything appears as though it's not wonderful, it's because somebody's lying, somebody's not reporting it right. It's the Republicans, it's there's sand in my eyes, I can't see. It's, there's just always an excuse. But to me, that I interpret that as being stupid because you're constantly using motivated reasoning. So you come up not just with something that's wrong. If you're actually trying to reason things out, you can be wrong sometimes. Right. But this is not being wrong. This is simply saying, I can't face reality. So I'm just going to make something up and pretend it's true, which ends up with disastrous results. Now let's move on. I think something else that has been revealed by the Biden administration, and that is NATO. Right. The reality of what NATO is. NATO, we are told, is a organization that's brought together. It's defensive. It's going to it's supposed to defend Europe from Russia and the threat of Russia. And it's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And people really interpreted that. It was never really explained, but North Atlantic was meant to believe countries that border the North Atlantic, right? And that's kind of what they have in common for the most part, which means what? Western Europe, really with Western Europe. I think what people have realized now, number one, the Biden administration attacked Germany. They attacked German infrastructure. So these knuckle draggers have revealed what? They've revealed that it is not defensive. Right? Number one, and it's not to be protected. It's not to protect Europe from Russia. It is offensive, and offensive meaning it attacks anybody that the U.S. empire points it at. Right? It is the U.S. empire umbrella machine, and that anything and anyone who is considered a danger to the U.S. or U.S. policy is subject to be attacked. Even internally powers, right? That if Germany, France, the UK, any of them, and not necessarily the UK, because the U.S. empire really is the U.S. and its right hand, the UK. But any of them, anything that the U.S. neocons view as a threat, this mad dog, this guard dog is there basically to attack. It is a guard dog for the U.S. empire and an attack dog for the U.S. empire. But I got to add something else. If you look at some of the historical instances where there were people who were trapped out in the wilderness, out in Antarctica per se, right? And they were, running out of everything, and they were starving, and they had their dogs that would just pull their sleigh. And at some point, when they got desperate, they literally ate the dogs, right? Well, that's what it is. It's a guard dog. The NATO organizations are a guard dog for the U.S. empire, to guard the U.S. empire from economic or military attack. It is an attack dog for the U.S. empire, in that the U.S. empire can use it to attack internally or externally anybody they want, be it Libya or Germany. But let's not forget, in times of desperation, what have some explorers done? They've eaten the dogs. So it's an attack dog. It is a guard dog, and when times get hard, the dog can be eaten. And there's some semblance of all of the above going on right now. And Atlantic just means, really, it doesn't mean Atlantic coast. I think it means something like this. When you go back to the early iterations of colonialism and colonial empires, when the Vikings, the Vikings would go out with their ships and attack and steal and rob and maraud, right? And then at some point, the British, they got this big navy, and they would go around the world and maraud. Remember, at one point, it was the Spanish, it was Portugal. So I think the Atlantic, the history of Atlanticism and NATO is countries that had access to the Atlantic, and that would use that access to go around the world doing evil colonial things and taking other people's stuff and slaughtering people, right? That the North Atlantic Treaty is treaty organization is a North Atlanticism treaty organization. And it is simply the modern day iteration of the colonial powers that bordered the Atlantic. And so the Atlantic was their access to the sea to go wherever and steal people's stuff. And now the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is not, we got to protect the North Atlantic. Remember, what did Macron say? He said, hey, wait a minute, China and Japan, they don't border the North Atlantic. So he was asking, literally, why are we talking about taking NATO to Asia? Asia's not the North Atlantic. We are supposed to be protecting our shores on the North Atlantic, right? What he didn't get, what the Biden administration is exposing, is no, this is just a historical reference when we say North Atlantic or Atlanticism. It's a historical reference that says the Atlantic was our access to the sea, and we went on out and off we went to Africa, wherever the hell we were going, and stole people's crap. So it's a historical reference to the colonial powers that could access the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, you think about it, you had Eastern European powers. They couldn't do that. They didn't have access to the Atlantic Ocean, and they couldn't go do the colonialism stuff that a France or a UK or some of the Spain or whatever, some of the other powers that were bordered this sea. It was the Atlantic, it was the Mediterranean, it was whatever the case may be. But my point being this, you had powers that could access the sea, and they used that access for colonial machinations, shall we say. Now, the other thing, I think, another thing we could discuss that has been exposed by the Biden administration is an issue of rules-based international order, and that's important. Why? There's a lot of people think about the word integrity, and they're like integrity, and they'll talk about integrity. But if you but they don't really break it down to what it really means. What does integrity mean, as far as from my perspective, right? Integration is at the root of it, right? You say things, you profess certain things. I would do this, I wouldn't do that. I'm a good guy, I'm a nice person, I'm a kind person, I'm an honest person, right? So you say things, you profess the rules-based international order, right? We're here to, what does Blinken say? We're here to stability, leadership, all these kinds of things, right? So you profess something. Integrity is this. Are your words and actions integrated, right? Integrity. Are your words integrated into your actions? Are your actions integrated into your words? When you say things, do the things that you say, do they match the things that you do, right? And the rules-based international order, and particularly the Biden administration, more so than people beside, because they're previous to them, because they're so, and I'm going to use this word, they're idiots. In other words, they're so locked into motivated reasoning, they can't get out of it. They're pure ideologues, the purest of ideologues, right? So to the pure ideologue, to the narcissist, to the sociopath, etc., right? They use words for different reasons than us. A lot of people have that issues. They'll marry some narcissist or they'll be dating some narcissist and they don't understand. They drive them crazy. Why? Because they don't understand that this person doesn't use language for the same reason that they use language, right? When I say, I don't like what you did, or I do like what you did, or don't do that, or ow, that hurt my feelings, or whatever, I say it because it hurt my feelings, or I don't like it, or I do like it. I say it to communicate my thoughts. Right? To communicate to you what I'm thinking, I utilize words, right? I use sounds and symbols or write it down to communicate my thoughts, to exchange thoughts, right? The ideologue or the narcissist uses words and language for manipulation. And those of us who use our language to communicate thoughts can't grasp that we're dealing with someone who doesn't use language for that, who uses language purely for manipulation. And they'll say something, and 5 minutes later, they'll say something that completely contradicts what they said before. And the hapless victim is like, huh? But you just said, the narcissist will say, nobody should ever call anybody a jerk. You called me a jerk. That's terrible. I hate when people call names. And the next day, the narcissist will say, you're a jerk. And you'll say, well, wait a minute. You just said yesterday that nobody should ever call anybody a jerk. Shut up, you're a jerk. And you're just making that up. I didn't say it. Then they'll gaslight them and say, oh, no, I never said that. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, well, wait a minute. You did say that yesterday. No, I didn't. You're just making things up, right? And they're sitting there getting, what? They're like somebody hit them in the head with a baseball bat. They're like, holy shit. You called me a jerk. And you said nobody should ever call another person a jerk. And then the next day you called me a jerk. And then when I said, what? But you called me a jerk yesterday. You just said, no, I didn't. But we both know you did, right? And they're sitting there. Their mind is going in circles because they think that person uses language to communicate their thoughts. They think that they're a good faith actor. They think that that person is saying, I didn't call you a jerk yesterday, because they don't remember calling them a jerk. They think that the person's saying, hey, nobody should ever call anybody a jerk, because they really mean that nobody should call anybody a jerk. When that person is saying that because that's a defense and an attack. You called me a jerk. Nobody should call anybody a jerk. That just means right now you called me a jerk, and that's the way I can defend and attack. Next day, when that person calls you a jerk, you say, wait a minute, yesterday you said nobody should ever call another person a jerk. I didn't call you. You called me a jerk yesterday. No, I didn't. They think the person really doesn't remember it. Oh my God, you don't remember? Yes, they remember it. They don't give a damn that they called you a jerk yesterday. They're saying that because it's a way to defend, right? No, I didn't call you a jerk. That doesn't mean, it just means I'm defending myself by saying, no, I didn't. We both know I called you a jerk. But if I called you a jerk, it wouldn't work for me and I'd be exposed as a hypocrite. So I have to say I didn't, right? What the Biden administration is revealing is that their language is pure narcissism. Do you think Tony Blinken is so stupid that he doesn't realize that the world is not looking for our leadership on Gaza? Of course he does. He's gaslighting us. He's saying the world does need our leadership on Gaza because that's what he needs to say right now to make his point. And if it were true, it would make his point. So they say things. So supposedly Joe Biden wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. Everybody knows it was, it's some iteration of Blinken and Sullivan and these guys that wrote it. But it had the same old tropes, right? Oh, we're leading the world, and the world is looking for our leadership, and we bring stability. Everybody knows we bring war and chaos, and they do too. But from their perspective, Sullivan and those guys didn't write that op-ed to be factual. Narcissists, sociopaths don't say things to be factual. They say things because they're trying to accomplish something. And they use language to accomplish things, not to accurately portray reality, not to accurately convey their thoughts. They are not good faith actors when it comes to communication. And the Biden administration is clearly showing more so than any administration in a long time, out of pure boneheadedness and motivated reasoning, that they don't even have the intelligence to fake it. Right? Look, you can't go but so far overboard. The narcissist isn't smart or wise enough to fake it, to say, man, I know I could say that, but that's too far. That would be the narcissist. Doesn't go like, well, I know I called that person a jerk yesterday. That'll be a little over the top just to say I didn't say it. So I'll come up with something else. You called me a jerk yesterday. Yeah, but what you really were acting really mean to me. And what I said is you're a gerbil. I didn't say jerk. To try to do something to fake. No, the narcissist doesn't think it back. The narcissist spurts out, I didn't say it. It's denial. In narcissism, they use denial. Hey, you stepped on my foot. No, I didn't. They just blatantly say it didn't happen. That's what the narcissist does. They gaslight people. It just didn't happen. No, they can slap you right in the head. Whap! Ow, you slapped me in the head. No, I never slapped you in the head. That's the narcissist, right? It is just pure denial, and it drives people crazy. But the Biden administration has demonstrated that level of narcissism, and they've demonstrated now to Russia and China. That's what Russia and China are like. You got to be freaking kidding me. You can't make a deal with these people. Why? Because thankfully, if you're dealing with someone, it's nice to know you're not dealing with a good faith actor, because then you don't have to waste your time trying to negotiate it. So when this guy from the Rand Corporation writes this article about how we could negotiate an end with the Russians, the truth is this: the Russians know they can't negotiate with Victoria Nuland and Tony Blinken and Joe Biden. You can't negotiate with people who will lie through their teeth while they're looking at you. It's not even a matter of trust. You can't negotiate with a narcissist. Anybody who's ever been in a relation with a narcissist knows. Well, let me change this. Let me do it differently. You can negotiate with a narcissist, because a narcissist can promise you anything because they ain't going to do it. Because the narcissist, you say, well, you mistreated me and I'm leaving you. And the narcissist says, please don't leave me. And you say, I'm not going to because you yell at me. And the narcissist says, I'll never yell at you again. Well, but you drink. I'll never drink again. Yeah, but you kicked my cat. I will be nice to that cat forever. Why? Why would the narcissist say that? Because they don't use language to communicate their thoughts. They're not saying, I won't yell at you again. I won't drink again. I will kick your cat again, because they mean it. They're saying it because right now that's what they need to say to bring you back in line. They are not good faith actors. The next day, the cat walks in, wham, they kick the fat cat 10 feet in the air. And you say to the narcissist, hey, you said you weren't going to kick the cat again. No, I didn't. Hey, stop picking on me. Why? Yeah, that cat's mean. They'll say anything. They don't care that just yesterday they promised you on a stack of Bibles 12 feet high that they wouldn't kick the cat. They just said I wouldn't kick the cat yesterday because that's what they needed at the time to say at the time to accomplish their goals. That's the way the narcissist mind works. They use language to accomplish goals, not to reflect reality and not to negotiate in good faith. Only for manipulation. And what China and Russia and Iran, et cetera, have found out is that the Biden administration are the clearest of narcissists. They're the clearest of manipulators. and that they are not good faith actors. So in reality, nobody can get a deal with these people. Well, let me change it. You can get a deal. You can always get a deal with a narcissist. It's easy to get a deal with somebody who'll promise you any damn thing you want and not deliver. So you can get a deal, promise you'll do this, and this. Sure, where do I sign? Boom. The next day they'll violate. Hey, you told me you weren't going to do this. No, I didn't. Stop lying. And besides, things are different now, and you're the bad one, not me. Yeah. They have been so blatant in their dishonesty, in their lies, and in their treachery, and going back on deals, and everything in their that they've made it easy. Actually, I put it like this: they've made it easy for people who are dealing with them. If you know that somebody is just a flat out pathological liar, Tony Blinken, yes, the world is looking for our leadership on Gaza. If you know you're dealing with somebody like that, really it becomes easy. Because when the person walks up to you and says, can we get a deal? You're like, yeah, no. Now, I think something else that's important and that they've demonstrated, and that is this. And here's the question. Who does the government, we talk about government all the time, right? The libertarians talk about governments. We got to get rid of government. Socialists talk about government. We got to change government in a way that it works for the people, not for the corporations. Everybody talks about the government, right? But one of the things I think the Biden administration has revealed a reality about the government. And that is this. You've heard me preach many times, right? And I freak out sometime on my PFW, or my show on WPFW in DC. I say, they don't care about you. They don't work for you, right? What I mean is this. The Biden administration has clearly, I mean, more so than anybody, it's blatantly shown the government of the U.S. empire doesn't work for or represent the working regular schmuck in any way, shape, or form. It's now obvious that they work for the elite ruling class and that their job, right? There's an old saying, let me put it to you a different way before I say that, what their job is. There's an old adage about the government going to the rich people saying, I'll protect you from the poor. And then going to the poor people saying, I'll protect you from the rich, right? Which is old government game, right? The Biden administration doesn't do that. They go to the rich and say, I'll protect you from the poor. And they go to the poor and say, I'll protect the rich from you, right? They make it clear as hell that the government, the state, the empire represents the ruling elite, right? Well, we've got homelessness everywhere. We need to send more money to Taiwan, Israel, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics. Okay, our healthcare system is, yeah, we need to send more money to the military industrial complex. Homelessness everywhere. Our what do you call it? Our grid is falling apart. Great, good idea. We need to send another 60 billion to Ukraine. They are making it clear. Censorship, right? What is that? It is you're saying things that the ruling elite doesn't like, and that we got to put a stop to that. Right? We literally, Biden and people in the White House calling social media, hey, shut this guy off. Oh, we don't like what that guy's saying. Oh, shut this guy down. Shut that guy down. The ruling elite's deciding who can say what. If you say something that is relevant, that is powerful, or that just on a given day, it's like the king sitting around and he has a bad day and he says, that guy over there cut his head off. Why? Because my back hurts today and I don't feel good and somebody's got to pay. That's the way they sit around the White House. They're having coffee. Oh my God, this coffee. That's the worst coffee I've ever had. Hey, call Twitter and tell them knock off 500 people today. Just get rid of them. Just cut them, throw them off social media. Why? Because my coffee's bad and I'm in a bad mood. Somebody's got to pay. I don't have a dog to kick, and I kick Joe Biden's dog, but he keeps biting everybody. So we're going to go with right now, kick 500 working class people off. They cut off their heads if they could get away with it. This is the king's court, my friend. They don't care about you. They don't give a crap about you. And the Biden administration is showing it. I had a professor one time that said, how do you spell commitment? M-O-N-E-Y. Show me where your money's going. I'll show you where your commitment is. It ain't going to us. It ain't going to the working class. Look at throughout the U.S. empire what's going on. The Germans, they're like, hey, boy, we're being deindustrialized and our economy's going to hell. What do you need to do? Let's buy some more weapons and let's go threaten Russia some more. And we'll send a tank brigade with no tanks over to some friggin' Baltic state that, that I don't, people got on me the other day. I said Slovakia, Lithuania, whatever the hell. They're like, you got the wrong one. darling, because the whatever Slovakia or whatever country it was doesn't even border on Russia. And I'm like, what difference does it make? The Baltic states are all like the size of this office I'm in. So like they ain't threatening nobody. Who cares? And the Germans are sending a tank brigade with no tanks. They can't afford tanks, and they can't get a tank brigade of 5,000 people together until the 2027. But meanwhile, the people in Germany are cold, they're hungry, they're angry, they're losing their jobs, and their government is doing the bidding of the Biden administration. They got like 200 bases in Germany. They're occupied. They're doing what they're told. The Biden administration is making it obvious that they work for the ruling class, and their job, it clearly is to make sure that the schmucks, the hoi polloi, the unwashed out there, that we don't rise up and push back against the ruling elite, that we don't even inconvenience the ruling elite by saying things that they may find offensive. Oh my gosh, we are not abused. You've said something about something that we don't like. That they give us the language that we have to use, the pronouns, whatever, and we haven't said something. If we say something that they don't like, or that could be implied to oppose U.S. foreign policy, we got to be thrown off. So another thing that they've demonstrated is who they work for. Clearly, look, Biden came in, yes, I'm going to bring back jobs, implying that he worked for us, right? Yes, I'm going to deal with the issues that we have when it comes to healthcare, and we're going to deal with this issue and that issue of student loans, blah, blah, blah. That implies that he works for the working class, that he understands that you're struggling with certain things, and that he's going to at least address some of those things, right? And when he got in, hey, what are you going to do about student loans and healthcare and homeless and this and that? Yeah, really? You think I'm dealing with that? I'm elected now. I had to say that thing to you, stuff to you idiots to get elected. Now that I'm idiot. Now that I'm elected, none of it's happening. He has revealed very clearly, good for them, who they work for. Let us continue. We also have seen this, and I think this is important. If you think about this AUKUS thing, right? The Australia, UK, and the U.S., right? This is some group of the English-speaking Anglo-Saxons coming together, to push back against China, right? If you think about the U.S. and the U.K., look, let me say this. I read a lot of Seymour Hersh's stuff and the Nord Stream stuff that he wrote, right? It was clear that it came from somebody in the intelligence community. And look, if you think that the UK wasn't involved in the Nord Stream attack, you're deaf, dumb, and blind. Remember, it came out a while back that as soon as it happened, that Liz Truss texted the somebody, Blinken, Biden, or somebody, and said, it's done, right? Of course, part of the person who revealed this stuff to Seymour Hersh was to get this stuff about a Biden administration, but they also left out the UK. They left them out deliberately. And anybody who knows anything about the UK knows they were involved, and that the Hersh piece was part of protecting. It was like, we're going to throw the Biden administration under the bus because we hate Biden and Blinken and Sullivan, but we're going to make sure that we don't throw the UK government under the bus because we're good with them. They had to do what they were involved. They loved doing it. But one of the things that we've discovered here, particularly with that attack, is that NATO, Atlanticism, etc., is about the US and UK. It is the Atlanticism, NATO, it's about the US and the UK. It's an Anglo-Saxon order that says the US and the UK lead it. They say what to do, and everybody else will do what they're told or face some level of coercion, whether it be it military attack, be it economic coercion. It has clearly revealed now that NATO is the U.S. and their right-hand henchman, the UK, that's it. There's France, sorry. Germany, forget it. All these Eastern European states, nah. In fact, I would argue this. I bet you this. If it came down to it, I've said all along, the U.S. ain't going and fighting Ukraine. Ain't happening. They ain't going in Ukraine and fight. They'll throw the Ukraine to the dogs. But here's what I have to say. If the Russians, which they're not, but let's just say for the sake of this argument, if they were to attack Lithuania, Slovakia, or one of these other postage size stamps countries with a government who traces its legacy back to the mustachioed Austrian dude, as Alexander McCurse liked to refer him. If the U.S. attack, if the Russians did attack Lithuania or one of these Slovakias, whatever the hell, U.S. wouldn't come in there and risk their lives for these people. Not happening. The U.S. would not come in and say, "Oh, the Russians have attacked Lithuania, Slovakia, and whatever the hell. We're going to go in and we're going to risk everything." You think they'd risk L.A., Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. for friggin' Slovakia? You don't understand how this empire works if you think so. No, they are dispensable, they are disposable, they are expendable. And the U.S. would say, great, the Russians attacked them. Now we can do more sanctions. They would just use that to go around the world and to try to drum up support for more sanctions. Nothing more, nothing less. They wouldn't do that. These people are not there to risk the existence of the United States through nuclear confrontation. That ain't their job. Their job there is to maybe be speed bumps, to maybe be, cast aside, to be eaten. In fact, I would argue that the neocons would love it if the Russians would attack the Baltic states. That's what I'm talking about. And oh my God, the Russians might attack the Baltic states. And any day right now, they're going to attack them. Hey, Russia, would you please attack the Baltic states? Yeah, they might just attack the Baltic states. Then we're going to be in deep trouble. Oh my God. You think they defend the Baltic states? They wouldn't. Not going to happen. Not ever going to happen. The Baltic states mean nothing to them. They ain't going to fight for Ukraine, their biggest, most powerful proxy army ever. Everything they got in there, they ain't going to fight for it. You think they fight for these states that are the size of a small neighborhood in Berg on the outskirts of Pittsburgh? No, not happening. So basically, they have defined the West as, defined NATO, the West, as Anglo-Saxon, English-speaking, UK, US. Even Australia, New Zealand, and Canada are nothing to them. Puppets. In fact, the issue they got with Canada is they're a little too close to the French. But they'll do what they're told, so that's good enough. So that's been exposed. The other thing, I guess, is, and this is interesting, and I think this is something that again, I could tie this back to a couple of things, and that is, who does the government work for, and what is actually NATO? There was an interesting vote, and my understanding from my insiders is that it was motivated and pushed through by the Biden administration in Congress, and the vote was that through Congress that any future president, read Donald Trump or whoever, any future president can't pull out of NATO, that they would need like 2/3 of Congress or something like that. In other words, they can't pull out of NATO because they'll never get that, right? Because Congress is owned by the weapons industry. So now what the Biden administration has done is said, we've got to cement this thing into NATO. And think about this. If a president, again, I'm not a Trump fan. I'm an independent. I'm far to the left from all these parties. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, as an intellectual exercise, Donald Trump says, I'm thinking about getting out of NATO. And the American people, the electorate, say, we're voting this guy in. Right? Just for the sake of argument. And he wins. What does that mean? That means that the American people went out of NATO. What if a president would run on a platform? What if Donald Trump would go to the debates and say, look, first and foremost, if I'm elected, I'm getting the hell out of NATO. And the American people are saying, hey, we're down with that. And he wins. What do we now know? That's been thwarted. The American people would choose this president, which, we can talk about whether the American people actually have the opportunity to choose a president, but whatever. Let's say RFK Jr., which I don't trust any of them, right? Not even Trump, none of them. But for the sake of an intellectual exercise, the guy wins and says, hey, elect me and I'll get out. And he elects him. What the Biden administration has guaranteed, because the president needs 2/3 of the Congress to get out of NATO is that the American people can't choose their way, can't vote their way out of NATO, right? That the ruling elite don't want out of NATO. And so they've determined the ruling elite don't want out of NATO, which means let's make a law so that the schmucks out here who vote in some guy can't vote in somebody to get out of NATO. They have demonstrated through that what NATO is. It is a policy tool of the ruling elite for world economic domination, ideally, right? And that the ruling elite do not want the unwashed, the hoi polloi, to be able to thwart that. That they don't want the government to be able to take actions that the ruling elite are in opposition to. So while the Biden administration was in, they simply pushed through something. So even if they lose, even if Trump gets in, or somebody, whoever the hell, me, that President Nixon can't get us out of NATO. Now, one could argue legally that President Nixon could say, okay, we're not going to officially get out of NATO. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to order as the head of all armed forces, I'm going to order all of our troops to leave Germany. I'm going to order these bases not closed. Hey, I'm not closing any bases, but I'm going to order our troops out of here, and order them home. So technically, without getting out of NATO, you could still pull the troops out. However, as we know, towards the end of Trump's last term, he literally wrote something and said, get the troops out of Syria and Afghanistan. He gave it to his policy, to his underlings, and they just ignored it. So the other side we know is that even if I came in and I said, look, President Nixon said, bring the troops home from here, and here, they'd simply say no. Why? Because they don't work for us. They don't work for us. They work for the ruling elite. And the laws and the rules are made so that the ruling elite can get with their policies, and so that Congress will be protected. The ruling elite policies will be protected from the great unwashed. Here's something else I think that's important. This is important. You hear people say this, well, I don't think we're going to have an election in 2024, right? We're not going to have an election. We're not, the Biden administration, they're going to stop an election. They'll find, here's what I think. They're not stupid, and they ain't going to stop an election per se, right? What happens if I say, and this has been in the past, right? If I say, look, I got two neocons, you can choose one. Which neocon do you want? Either way, you're going to get a neocon. You see, here's the thing about it. Do not confuse the illusion of choice, the illusion of an election, with an election. If I can give you, if you think about this, you who do you want to choose between? You want to choose between Barack Obama and John McCain. Now, at the time, we thought that there was a marked difference between Barack Obama and John McCain. But afterwards, we found out that there wasn't all the difference that we thought, was there? So realistically, if I can give you two iterations of John McCain, one that's handsome, debonair, brilliant, a great orator, all these things, but he's still a neocon. Or I can give you John McCain, a schlumpy looking old neocon who looks and smells and sounds like a neocon. What difference does it make if I have an election or don't have an election? I don't need to stop the election if I can control the outcome. Hillary Clinton once said we shouldn't have allowed the Palestinians to have an election unless we could control the outcome. She was reflecting what the ruling elite feel. And now they're looking at it and saying, look, it would be problematic if we stopped the election. It would be problematic. Too much trouble for them. They ain't going to do that. What they're starting already is this. We got to charge Trump with 567 different charges. We're going to charge him with everything we can. Mopery on the high seas, you name it, right? Exposing himself to a blind person, you name it. We're going to charge Trump with everything we can. We're going to do everything we can to take out Trump. We're going to try to have his trials on Super Tuesday. We're going to do everything we can, every machination to control Trump, because they feel, probably even more than I feel, but they feel that Trump is a threat to the system, right? I don't think he's that much of a threat to the system, but if the system thinks he's a threat to the system, then he is. I mean, if they believe he is, then the fact is, in fact, he is, right? If they believe he is, simply because they will treat it as though he's a threat to the system. And in some ways he may be, because he's not one of their controlled puppets. That's saying it. I mean, he's still a problem. And I would never vote for a Trump or want a Trump. I want something different, but I think the system is so corrupt that at this point it's not salvageable. But so let me just say this. I think rather than simply bother with getting rid of the election and doing as they have in the past, given us the illusion of choice so that we could think that we chose Biden, or think that we chose Obama, or think that we chose George W. Bush or Clinton over Dole, because Clinton was so much different than Dole, right? That what they'll do is they will modify the illusion, if not do away with it, right? So now here's what I mean. Okay, number one, I give you an election and I can control the outcome somewhat, and I give you the illusion of an election. Now I'm desperate. I can't afford to have somebody win at all that I don't want in. So I won't even be as careful as I normally am about showing that I rigged it, that everything's rigged, right? Normally, they at least try to pretend like it ain't all rigged. They try to pretend like it's not all a fraud, like this is not the illusion of democracy, that it's really democracy. But I think what we'll see more so in 2024 is they'll have much less of a focus on convincing us that it ain't a fraud. It'll be more like this. Look, it's all a fraud. I know it's a fraud. You know it's a fraud. We all know that it's a fraud, but we can't really afford the luxury anymore of going through the machinations to argue that it ain't a fraud, to pretend that it ain't a fraud. So now we'll just say, look, everybody knows it's a fraud. Let's get this thing done and stick whoever we want in. So rather than no, they're not going to do away with the election, they'll just make it a bit more of an illusion, and they won't take the pains that they normally take to convince us that it ain't a fraud. They'll just say, look, we're going to have to steal this thing like we always do. And when we need to, if they don't have, what do I mean? If they don't have the two people that they want, where they clearly say either one, pick one, Hillary or McCain, right? If they can't do that, well, then they'll have to go further. Now, as I see the move now, the move seems to be slap Biden out of the way, right? Do away. I mean, look at the primaries now. Literally, you've got 4 states, and this is important. You've got North Carolina, Tennessee, Massachusetts, and Florida have now said the only name we're going to put on the primaries on the ballot is Biden, even though Dean Phillips is running as a Democrat. Marianne Williamson is running as a Democrat. We're not even going to put their names on the ballot. We're not even going to pretend that we're having a primary. We're just giving this thing to Biden, right? They've already signaled clearly that the game is up. The fraud is over. We're not even going to try to fake it anymore. Like, we're not working for the ruling elite and picking whoever we want. We'll pick who we want, and you'll like it or you won't. You don't have an option. And of course, I suspect they get to the convention and they just say, oh, funny thing, Biden's out. Kamala Harris is out. It's whatever, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, whoever the hell they decide they're going to stick in there. Boom, that's it. Game over. So that's, the election is not going to be officially canceled, but the illusion that there's fairness and democracy will be dispensed with, because they can't afford it anymore, to be quite frank. All right. And I would say this, because that's the price that's paid when corporate power completely, absolutely, and unabashedly rules, right? What are we looking at now? We're looking at corporate power and oligarchical power who run everything. And we've tipped over that edge where they fake like we're in charge. And now it's, look, we work for the ruling elite, for the corporate power. We work for the oligarchical capital, international, the global financial capital, right? That's who we work for. And we can't really afford the illusion anymore. So we've tipped over that edge where we could continue to pretend that it was otherwise. And as a result now of having given all the power over to the corporations, all the power over to the oligarchs, to the point where when you got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the avatars for oligarchical international capital, the jig is up. The game is over. When you put those kind of people in power, those kind of idiot, brain dead morons in power, you're not even trying to fool the people anymore. You're just saying, let's stick a cardboard cutout of a politician out there. And you guys can look at this cardboard cutout. You can hit it. You can punch it. You can throw darts at it. It doesn't matter to us because it's an avatar for power. It's not power. When you get to that point, there's no point in faking it in the elections anymore because everybody can look at Biden and Harris and say, my God, we're supposed to believe that those people are in charge. They've done away with any pretense of democracy. And so corporate international capital is in power, and they're just not going to pretend that there's democracy anymore. They'll go through the motions. Yeah, we're going to go through an election or something. We'll put some people out here. You can vote or not. Whoever the hell cares. Mail-in votes, call-in votes. The email-in votes. It doesn't matter. It ain't about people are like, it's the mail-in ballots that they're doing. They control the options that you have. What difference does it make when they stick out Gavin Newsom versus Nikki Haley? What difference does it make if you mail them in, if you go to a machine, if you email them in, if you skywrite in the sky who you're voting for? Once they stick in Gavin Newsom versus Nikki Haley, you have the illusion of democracy. What difference does it make how you exercise this illusion? You can do a dance. Hey, I'm going to do a rain dance. I'm going to do this dance for my candidate to win. And you like shake some chicken bones like a witch doctor, throw them out there, boogity, boogity, boo. You do this dance. My candidate's going to win. And they say, what do you know? It's Nikki Haley. Who would have saw that coming, right? It's all a fraud. And at least let me say this, not to disparage witch doctors, because what we have learned over the course of time is the disparagement of witch doctors was wrong because they were actually using herbal and natural medications and medicines. And now we found out that all of these herbs that we were like, oh, these witch doctors don't know anything, that they were using herbs that we use today because they work. So I'm not disparaging witch doctors. They were herbal medicine. They were practitioners of herbal medicine and very, very successful ones over the course of the years. Okay, so let's continue. I will say that I have one because I had notes here. And last but not least, let's end up with something positive, and that is, why is it that for all of the empire's machinations, there's 1,577 people watching this right now of just a schmuck like Garland Nixon, just some guy who's Pasadena, Maryland, running off at his mouth, not particularly bright or well-educated or powerful or anything. I'm just another putz. And there's 1,500 people listening right now having this discussion. Why is that? Why is it that I can turn on Jimmy Dore or whoever, and there's going to be people watching with bated breath? All of these, might I recommend Middle Nation? That's really, they're really interesting. A guy named Shahid Bolson. It's called Middle Nation for those who haven't watched it. He's a Muslim guy, and I don't agree with everything he says. There's things that I don't say that I don't agree with, but Middle Nation is pretty interesting. I really enjoy watching that. The Middle Nation, get a lot of it out of it, but because there are people who, and we learned this during COVID, There are a lot of people out here, and I suppose the people surmise that the people in the chat are like me. When the ruling elite, and by that I mean the government, because they represent the ruling elite, gives us a command. When the system gives us an order, right? Okay, you saw this during COVID. There are people that just say, yes, master, and they do whatever they're told. Yes, 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 and they do whatever they're told. But there is an element in society that demands a logical explanation. That when somebody says do X, we say, well, no problem. But first, you have to give us a logical reason for it, right? That we are going to ask why you want us to do that. Why should we do it? Well, you should do it because we told you not good enough. Explain to us, give us some data, give us some information, give us something. There are those of us who, when we're told something, the Russians are evil, Chinese are evil, whoever, the Iranians are evil, everybody's evil, we're going to say they may very well be evil, but we need something. Trump's a Russian bot, may very well be a Russian bot, but what we need is a logical explanation as to why we should believe what you're saying. And those of us usually who think like that have something else that is accompanies it, another part of our character, and that is we are people that are not afraid of being publicly attacked, publicly berated, publicly denounced, right? We don't care. People like us, we're going to ask, hey, you've got to do this. We're going to say why. And when they say, well, if you don't do it, you're a jerk, you're a Russian something or other, you're a Iranian loving, China loving, Assad loving, you know, all this stuff, right, that the system says, right? You're a misinformer, you're a purveyor of conspiracy theories, right? There are those of us who are going to say, I don't have a fear of public attack. So you can say I'm all of these things. Fine. You got that out of the way. You've made every claim against me. Now let's get back to my question. If you want me to do this, to believe this, to follow this, to accept this, whatever this may be, you're going to have to give me a logical explanation as to why. I'm going to have to read it and I'm going to say, well, because of this, this, I have some more questions about it. This doesn't make sense. But why should I? How does this? We're going to say, I'm a working class stiff, or I'm a regular person, or I'm a poor person, or I'm a middle class, or maybe I'm upper middle class, whatever. But for all that you've told me I should do and why, it doesn't make sense. And let me ask you this. How's that going to benefit me? Who does that benefit? So we're going to ask questions. Give me a logical explanation as to why I should believe you and follow your orders. And give me a reason as to how it benefits me and people like me, my friends, my kids, the people that I know, other workers, the people that I work with. Tell me how it benefits mankind in general. How are we going to all be better off if we do this? We're going to ask those kind of questions. And when they say, shut up or we'll throw you off Twitter, we're going to say, you can throw me off Twitter. But you can't make me stop asking these questions. And if I don't ask them, my buddy's going to ask them. If I don't ask them, one of the 1,598 people who are watching this show right now who are going to ask them. See, that's the last problem that they have. That there are those of us who are never going to say, okay, you just told us to do this. We're going to do it. To believe this, we're going to believe it. To accept this, we're going to accept it. And we have a historical context for that. They're going to say, but you got to believe me. And we're going to immediately say, we got to bring up a historical context. Aren't you the people that lied to us about weapons of mass destruction? You notice people like us always bring that up. Didn't you lie to us about weapons of mass destruction? Sure. Didn't you lie to us about Iraq babies and incubators? Well, yeah. How about the Gulf of Tonkin? Yeah. Remember the Maine? Well, okay. We're going to go on and on and on and say we have a historical context where the ruling elite have lied to us over and over and over. So we are justified in questioning them. And now we have questions. And now you're saying something. Why the hell should we believe you? We're going to say, not only do we have questions, not only do you have to give us a logical reason as to why we should believe you and go along with what you want. We're going to say our default position is that we think you're lying, that from a historical context, you've lied to us so much that we shouldn't believe you, that we have every right to ask this question. And damn it, we're going to continue to ask these questions. That's the last part of it. That through all of Biden administration revealing themselves, through our government making it clear now There's no democracy here, that we have the illusion of democracy, and not much of illusion in anymore, that they absolutely work for the ruling class, and their job is to keep our mouths shut, to censor us, to do whatever they can to stop us from asking the questions that we have a right to ask. The reality is, to end this thing up, is this: there's people like us that ain't going nowhere. We ain't going to stop asking these questions. And that's a good thing. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate everybody taking some their time this morning to listen. I got to run, as you know, got to go in and do my show, etc. But I just enjoy. I had some notes that I've taken from various things that I listened to and read. And I thought, man, these are some things that I want to say. You know, I mean, I'm reading and thinking about contemplating the ruling elite, the job of the government, and, you know, and even our culture. You know what I mean? We've got a culture, and you got to ask yourself, when you see the U.S. empire collapsing, you got to say to yourself, is it the collapse of our culture? Is it the collapse of our economic beliefs? Is it the collapse of our political beliefs? What is collapsing? Because obviously the empire is collapsing. What is it called? What causes it? And I have to say this: I believe that Americans, the people of the empire, don't understand that there's two cultures. And one of them is definitely collapsing, that the ruling elite have a different culture than we do. And the culture of the ruling elite collapsed in the same way that, you know, the French Revolution was what? The people were so desperate. Yeah, I mean, you can argue about how it turned out or whatever, but the bottom line was the people were so desperate. The culture of the ruling elite in France was, we're going to live high on the hog and everybody else is going to suffer and we don't care. And there was a backlash because of that. The collapse of the culture of the ruling elite. Definitely there's the collapse of the culture of the ruling elite. The question is, the rest of our culture, I don't know. I'll say this about culture. Let me say this about culture. Because people, we must defend our culture. Here's what I'll say about culture. A culture is great if you enjoy it and understand it and see it for what it is. If you say, we've got food, we've got some traditions that are pretty cool and fun, we've got music, we've got all of these things in our culture. Okay, great. And you enjoy those things. But the other part of it is this: if you find it necessary to believe that your culture is superior to other cultures, culture then becomes a prison. Culture then becomes something that imprisons you, that you must defend. See, because once you argue that your culture is superior to any other culture, you now must defend your culture. Because when somebody says, no, it's not, what do you have to say? Yes, it is. You've now taken a position, you've dug in a position, and you must defend that position. And when you start defending it, you move into the realm of motivated reasoning. Because you can't say, my culture is better, or my culture is better than yours, and then somebody else like me says, give me a logical reason why this culture is better than that culture, and you got logical reasons. You now are going down the road of defense. Well, for this reason, that no matter what I throw at you, you have to come up with something else to defend it. You're now just making things up if you have to, because you've taken a position, and here's the position. Here's the position. Here's the problem with the position. The argument that my culture is better than your culture, our culture is better than their culture, one culture is better than another, the foundation of it is that, number one, there's a hierarchy of cultures. Some are better and some are worse. Number two, I'm the person who has the right to make that determination. See, if one culture was better or worse, number one, what are the standards by which cultures are judged on? And number two, is it a universal? Are they universal standards, or did I make them up? That's like a person who's a Christian saying, well, Christians are the best. A person who's a Muslim, no, Muslims are the best. And a person who's a Hindu, you guys are idiots. It's Hindus that are the best. All of them are making, I'm a Christian, Christianity is the best based on the standards in the Bible. No, Islam is best based on the standards in the Quran. No, the Hindu based on the Bhagavad Gita. You see what I mean? It now becomes, people are making a determination that their culture is best based on the standards created by their culture. Now I'm the prosecutor, I'm the jury, I'm the judge, I'm the advocate, I'm everything, and I determine that mine is better. Well, isn't that great? Garland, you know what? I got to tell you something. I'm the most handsome man in the world. Really, Garland? According to who? Me. And I'm the smartest guy in the world. According to who? Me. Now, all of a sudden, I am conveniently determining that I'm the best at everything based on based on what? Because I'm 5'11", and 5'11" is the perfect height. Women love guys that are 5'11". Really? Anything else? I'm at 192 pounds. Yeah, women love guys that are 192 pounds. So I am the most handsome guy, most attractive guy to all women in the world, simply because I set the standards. Oh yeah, I got a size 10 and a half shoe. People with size 10 and a half are always the smartest people. So now I set a bunch of standards. I looked at myself. Let's see, what's my height? What's my weight? What's my shoe size? All righty. Those are the standards by which I'll judge the men, all men, based on me. That's why when idiots run around saying my culture is the best, it becomes you're the judge, jury, and advocate based on you. There isn't a best culture. There isn't a worst culture. If you're in that culture and you enjoy it, enjoy it. And you can't even understand your own culture unless you study other cultures. You can't even know your culture unless you have something to compare it with. It's like the universe, right? If there was only one tennis ball floating in the universe, there would be nothing. There would be nothing to know. Where is it? It has to be in relation to something. Now you put a second tennis ball in the universe and you can say, oh, we got two tennis balls in the middle of nothingness. We can judge what they're closer to. Now, if you put a third one in there, you can say, okay, these two are closer than that one. And now these two win a democracy. We got two tennis balls here, one over there. Democratically speaking, this is best because a lump of two versus, see what I mean? You have to have something to compare it to. Vanilla ice cream is the best. You ever had any other kind? No, of course not. Makes no sense. So one of the things we're dealing with in the U.S. is figuring out our culture as people try to change it. Hey, our culture is the best. And then they talk about the issue of trans and LGBTQ plus and things like that, and other people and drag queen story hour and things like that. And there are people that look at it and say, well, that's an adjustment in our culture that I'm not crazy about, or maybe I am crazy about, whatever the case may be. That makes our culture better. That makes our culture worse. And we're even arguing about what our culture even is. So we got some issues with our culture. I'll put it like that. We got some issues because the people in power are trying to make adjustments to the culture to benefit them and to keep us fighting amongst each other. And it works pretty good. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. I am out of here. I really appreciate everybody taking an hour and 21 minutes out of their time to listen to me. Let me end up by saying this. Make sure you see everything scrolling across the bottom. Patreon, you know what that does. PayPal, you know those options. Buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee or three, whatever, how many you want. Buymeacoffee.com. Certainly appreciate that. That's always good. And buy me a coffee now. It'll be like, buy Garland a coffee, $5. How many do you want? 1, 2, 3, none. Whatever you can afford. And now Buy Me a Coffee now gives you the option to say, I want to do this monthly. And just like Patreon, you don't have to go through Patreon. You can buy me a coffee. Of course, follow me on rockfin.com. And last but not least, my Cash App information is there. So thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to try to make some changes and enhance the channel and enhance a few things and get on some other platforms for the new year. So have a wonderful day. Thanks a lot. Peace. I'm out.